Good evening, everyone. My name is Anna Deal, and today I'll be discussing how racial discrimination has shaped the history of ballet. Ballet is often celebrated for its beauty, precision, and grace, but its history is also deeply tied to racial exclusion and biases. By looking at how racial discrimination has impacted ballet from its origins to the present day, we can better understand how these dynamics continue to influence the art form. We'll explore how the history of ballet intersects with racial discrimination, how access to ballet was historically tied to social class, and how the inclusion of dancers of color has evolved over time, despite the barriers they have faced. Ballet began in 1672 when King Louis XIV founded the first ballet academy in France. At this time, ballet was reserved for the upper classes and was seen as a political spectacle that reinforced social hierarchies. Joan Picart, in Critical Race Theory and Copyright in American Dance, explains that during the Renaissance, ballet was a display of, quote, status, political authorization, or resistance. It was a way to show wealth, power, and divine favor. Because ballet was associated with the elite, Black people who were considered of lower status were excluded from this art form. Ballet was for white aristocrats, and people of color were not given access, reinforcing early notions of exclusion and the aesthetic of whiteness in dance. On the left is an image of King Louis XIV, along with a depiction of a court dance from that era, showcasing the lavish costumes and the all-white participants typical of the ballet scene during this time. Even as ballet evolved, the ties to social class remained strong. In the 19th century, dancers were still expected to hold themselves with a specific posture that symbolized aristocratic refinement. As Picard writes, dancers would hold themselves with an erect, uplifted spine, with an unbending torso, with shoulders pulled up and back. This posture not only indicated class, but also reinforced the exclusion of marginalized groups, particularly people of color. During the Romantic period, ballet continued to be defined by courtly ideals, where the emphasis on grace, elegance, and purity reinforced racial and social distinctions. These ideals were rooted in a vision of ballet that was inaccessible to non-white bodies. To the right is a painting depicting a 19th century ballerina with white, long features. This painting was done by James Henderson. In the early 20th century, the exclusion of Black dancers from ballet companies remained a significant issue. In the 1920s and 1930s, even highly talented Black dancers were routinely denied roles simply because of the color of their skin. As Picard explains, it was customary at this time for dance companies to turn away dancers even when they would have been dancing a small role. This exclusion was based on entrenched racial biases, with companies often refusing to hire Black dancers altogether. This system led to fewer opportunities for POC dancers in ballet, reinforcing the idea that ballet was an exclusively white art form. It wasn't until the rise of dance companies like the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater, which is pictured on the right, and Philadelphia, which is also pictured on the right, that more spaces were created for Black dancers to pursue their craft. One of one of the most pivotal figures in the American ballet scene was George Balanchine, the founder of the School of American Ballet, also known as SAB. Balanchine is often credited with integrating Black dancers into his work, such as the inclusion of Arthur Mitchell, pictured on the right, who became the first African American male principal dancer. However, Balanchine's integration of Black dancers wasn't always without its racial biases. Picard notes that while Balanchine used Black dancers, such as Mitchell, in his choreography, he also incorporated non-white elements as part of an aesthetic. For example, Balanchine used Mitchell's black skin as a way to create contrast in his costume designs, which was more about the aesthetic effect than recognizing their artistry. Balanchine also used a Native American dancer, Maria Tallchief, who's also pictured on the right, in his remake of The Firebird. But again, the focus was on her race as part of the exotic element of the ballet rather than her technical skill or artistic expression. As ballet moved into the mid-20th century, dancers of color continued to face barriers. Misty Copeland, pictured to the right, in particular, rose to prominence as the first African American female principal dancer at the American Ballet Theater in 2015. Copeland's journey was not without its challenges, though. In her memoir, Life in Motion, she describes how she faced overtly racist comments and was excluded from lead roles in ballets like Swan Lake and La Bayadere, which were considered white ballets. Despite these obstacles, she persevered and became an icon of racial inclusion in the ballet world. As Picard writes, for many talented Black dancers, dancing ballet was neither a rejection of ballet's white aesthetic nor a rejection of non-white racial heritage. Rather, it was a rejection of the traditional Black aesthetics, ballet aesthetics, banishment of non-white bodies from its enclave. Copeland's journey exemplifies this fight against racial exclusion as she succeeded not by rejecting ballet, but by demanding a place for herself within its boundaries. In conclusion, ballet's history has been shaped by racial exclusion, starting from its origins in the 17th century with the aristocratic association of ballet to the systemic racism Black dancers faced in the 20th century and continue to face. Despite this, figures like Misty Copeland, Alvin Ailey, and Arthur Mitchell have helped create more opportunities for dancers of color, proving that change is possible. While ballet has made progress, there is still work to be done to ensure that race is no longer a barrier to success in this art form. It's crucial that we continue to push for greater representation and dismantle the prejudices that persist in the ballet community as well as the dance community overall. Here's my bibliography. Thank you all so much for listening.